Oh, is it?
No.
Oh, ours, yeah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start off, we're going to start off with swearing in a new city councilor this evening, Ben McDonald. And so,
we're doing that first.
our administrative assistant will do that. As she passes out paperwork. So, we'll have a little ceremony here, and then we'll get on with business. So,
Hey, Keith.
Melissa, when you're ready.
Melissa's the deputy city recorder, not administrative assistant, right? Okay, just wanted to be clear.
All right, so repeat after me. Raise your right hand.
The other right.
Rather not my right. I, Ben McDonald.
I, Ben McDonald,
Swear to support
swear to support
and uphold the Constitution
and uphold the Constitution
and laws of the United States of America,
and laws of the United States of America,
the state of Oregon,
State of Oregon,
Stayton City Charter,
State and City Charter,
and general ordinances
and general ordinances
of the city of Stayton,
of the City of Stayton,
and to faithfully perform the duties of the office
the duties of the office
of city councilor
of City Councilor
for the city of Stayton.
for the City of Stayton.
So help me God.
So help me God.
You're
All right.
Thank you.
Sit down. Welcome. Welcome.
And smell mostly.
I thought we'd taken care of this.
Was this the thing you were talking about?
Okay, are we ready? Okay, let's go. Let's go to work. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, friends and neighbors, citizens. Let's have a meeting come to order. The Stayton City Council in this first meeting of the year 2020. It's Monday, January 6th. Would all who share the same sentiments please join me in a flag salute? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you all. Let's see. Are there any, let's see, the staff is all here tonight, and the council's all here, and the new counselor. Additions to the agenda, are there any? Declarations of ex parte contact, conflicts of interest, bias, okay. Hearing none. Appointments tonight. Let's do those before we go to public comments. Some Planning Commission reappointments, Dixie Ellard and Richard Lewis. Parks and Recreation Board reappointment, Andrew Westland. And Budget Committee reappointments, Ralph Lewis and Connie Dominguez. And I would ask the council's endorsement, let's put it, of those reappointments to those committees. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I move that we move forward with the reappointments.
That's fine. Yeah,
That sound
good?
good?
Yeah.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to confirm those appointments. Is there any discussion?
I would just like to say thank you for your service, and we appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay, if there's no other discussion, would all in favor of that motion to offer those reappointments and appointments, please say yes.
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 Okay, all right. Opposed, same sign. Hearing none, we'll declare those folks reappointed to the various commissions. Public comments tonight. Breeze Peterson, please. Yes. Tell us where you live, please.
Hi, 712 North First Avenue. So I just wanted to state that I'm opposed to the ordinance change regarding east side of First Avenue. I think I'm the only one it would affect.
I believe I'm the only frontage business in that little small section. And so also when I first started my business, I started on 2nd Avenue for 8 years. And when a place opened up, I moved to First, so I'd have more exposure. And so I invite everybody else on the rest of the streets to do the same if they like. But I would like to not have the city be a neighborhood association. And that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Breeze. Wendy. Wendy Stone.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Stone. I live at 525 North Myrtle Avenue in Stayton. I'm the president of the Sandy M. Heritage Foundation, and I'm here this evening to follow up on my December 2019 request for the City Council's help. When we, Sandy M. Heritage Foundation, met with the City of Stayton officials in April of 2018 to begin the change of use process to convert the Brown House Event Center from a single-family residence to a community event center, it was suggested that rather than ask for a waiver of the fees necessary to complete the process, we instead ask the City Council for the money needed to process our change of use application. If I recall correctly, this suggestion came from the City Manager, Keith Campbell. On June 4, 2018, I came before this body to request help for, among other things, the money necessary to complete the change of use process we are going through. At that time, the council asked me to return when we had a clearer picture of exactly what we needed. On December 2, 2019, I came before this body and requested the city help us by funding $400 for the change of use process, which is Dan Fleshman's estimate of our fee. The change of use process will fulfill Sandy M. Heritage Foundation's original founder's vision to make the house and grounds available to the public so people can make new memories there. We believe in the vision of the original Board of Trustees. Support for the Brown House is in line with the council's identified goal of supporting economic revitalization in the downtown area. I'm back before you tonight because the council took no action on my December request, and I'm not certain what more I need to do.
Okay. Thank you to this point.
Thank you, Wendy.
So, who can tell us where that request is? I thought it was taken care of.
My understanding was that a citizen had offered to cover the cost. That was what we had been notified of, that
Okay.
a citizen had agreed to pay for the fee that was associated with that.
Okay, all right. Okay.
We did have a community member who happened to be present the evening that I made the request, offered the $400 and has given us that. I did ask her if she wanted it back if the city council came through, and she said no. I guess I was missing something in that if there was a presumption that it was being handled by someone else, that was not communicated to me in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. So, as it stands, there has been a grant, whatever, a gift to take care of that, though?
Yes.
Okay.
If I may, I've been feeling as though we don't see a lot of support from the city for what we're doing. It's taken us 20 years to get the money through grants and individual, mostly donations. And as a longtime resident, hometown girl of Stayton, I guess I expected more from the city. My mistake, maybe.
Okay.
Mr.
All right.
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to say that I feel like our job up here is also to be a good steward of city funds. And if someone has already gifted what you needed and it's been taken care of, then why would we gift $400 more of taxpayer dollars when someone has already said, I'm going to cover that fee that you're specifically asking to be covered?
I guess my feeling on that is that that's one thing that's been covered. There's many more things that still need to be done, and that money can still be used.
I get that, but we don't just give out money as grant. Like, we have certain programs. We can't just start giving nonprofits money over and over and over again.
Mr. Mayor, point of order. This is not an opportunity for back and
Yeah,
forth.
it's not really, shouldn't be really
Thank you.
a discussion. It's just a citizens' 3 minutes to share what they need with us. I'm kind of a believer in free discussion at these things, but it does get kind of out of line and carried away sometimes. In a perfect world, I'd have everyone say everything they need to say, even if it took all night. But not a perfect world, and it doesn't work that way, I guess. Anyway, I don't know. Wendy, there are grant funds available, and
Mr. Mayor.
procedures.
We've
and
applied to that
programs.
program, if that's what you're referring to. And I think my biggest objection right now was that I was not informed that the city wasn't going to act on it because of someone else's actions.
Oh.
I understand that, but a little communication would have gone a long way.
okay.
I think we should move on.
All right, thank you. Agreed?
Thank you.
Let's see, is there any other public comments this evening? I've had 2 green slips. Are there any others? Let's go on then to consent agenda. December 2nd, 2019, City Council minutes, and a liquor license, limited on-premises commercial and off-premises application, North 3rd LLC. And I guess I had a question on that. Is that rumors?
Yes, Mayor, it is.
Okay. I guess I could have figured that out, since they're supposed to have a soft opening in a month.
I spoke with the owner the other day. They're working diligently on the premise. So,
Okay.
seeing a lot of activity. Hopefully they will be.
They were down there at 7:30 this morning, inside as I cruised along in the rain, and they were in there doing something, so it's good. It's good. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, consent
Make a
agenda.
motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to accept the consent agenda as presented. Everyone's had a chance to look at that. And would all in favor say aye, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, same sign. Hearing no opposition, we'll declare that motion passed and the consent agenda is approved. And we have a public hearing. And rather than wait for Alyssa to remind me that I have to read this statement, I'm going to do it, just like I thought of it on my own. This is a ordinance number 1041, amending land use code to establish the North First Avenue Design Overlay District. And here we go. Good evening, my name is Henry Porter, and as mayor, I'll be presiding over this hearing. This is the time and place set in the public hearing in the matter of land use file number 13-09/19 concerning legislative amendments to the Land Use Development Code to establish a design overlay district along a portion of North First Avenue. Hearing's now open. At the back counter is the agenda for this evening's meeting, which lays out the order in which people will be called on to speak during the public hearing. copies of the proposed amendments, city's rules of procedure for land use public hearings, and a brochure written to facilitate your participation in the public hearing. You're encouraged to obtain and read a copy of these documents as well. At this time, I'd ask the audience if there are any objections to the notice of this hearing. I don't hear any. To the jurisdiction of this body to hear and consider the case? I don't hear any there. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias by any members of this body? And I don't hear any there. When it's your turn to speak, please state your name and address for the record. As a participant in the hearing, the city is required to notify you of the final results of the process. We are now ready for the staff report. Mr. Flashman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. The issue before you this evening is a public hearing on legislative amendments to the city's Land Use and Development Code, which, if enacted, would establish a new overlay district along a portion of North First Avenue that would include design standards similar to those that apply in the downtown zones. An overlay district is one that, as the name implies, applies additional regulations on top of the underlying zoning. In this case, the overlay district does not affect the uses that are permitted or the dimensional requirements of the underlying zones, but would establish certain design standards within the area that is impacted by the overlay district. And that area, as proposed, is the area on the east side of North First Avenue between between East Washington Street and the Stayton Power Canal. In 2007, the City Council adopted the Stayton Downtown Transportation and Revitalization Plan, and in implementing it, established new zoning districts in the downtown area. The Transportation and Revitalization Plan called for, the planning area for that plan included both sides of North First Avenue. The plan called for North First Avenue to remain in the commercial retail zone instead of being put into these new downtown mixed-use zones. However, the plan called for design standards to be developed to improve the overall visual character of the street while continuing to accommodate traffic and the highway uses that are permitted there. Needless to say, that was now 13 years ago, and its implementation was ignored for quite a while. This spring, the Planning Commission received a request from Revitalize Downtown Stayton to consider some type of design standards along the east side of North First Avenue. The Planning Commission considered those at its July meeting and some ideas at its September meeting. And the results of that was the proposal that you have before you. They held a public hearing at their October 28th meeting. Lance, would you pass that up to the council? What I'm sending to you, what I'm passing out to you is a copy of the written notice for, I believe this is a copy of the notice for this evening's hearing. A very similar notice was sent to not only all of the property owners that would be impacted, but the owners of the businesses in this area that would also be impacted. The notice that went out prior to the Planning Commission's hearing, and both notice, I believe that both notices included copies of the proposed amendments. Following, at the October Planning Commission meeting, there was one member of the public who was present to testify. The proposed amendments that you have in front of you as part of Ordinance 1041 establish the new overlay zone. As I said, they do not affect the uses permitted or the dimensional requirements. The design standards included in the amendment would only apply to changes to the property after the effective date of their adoption. They are based on the downtown design standards, but are not identical to them, so they would apply similar standards for landscaping and exterior materials and colors. The overlay zone, as I said, applies along the east side between East Washington and East Water Street and includes those properties with frontage on North First Avenue. Following their October public hearing, the Planning Commission has recommended to you adoption of the standards as proposed in Ordinance 1041. So when time comes, I'll... Oh, the other thing I do want to say is the comments that you heard earlier this evening were not, because they were not part of the public hearing, are not part of the record and probably should be repeated.
All right. Is that it, Dan, for now?
That's it for me for now.
Okay, thank you. Questions from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Dan, why only the east side of the street and not both sides of the street?
The east side of the street is what was requested to the Planning Commission from Revitalize Downtown Stayton because I'm not quite sure, their recognized area of concern or area, I don't want to say jurisdiction, as recognized by the Oregon Main Street program includes only the east side of First Ave.
Follow up?
Okay, go ahead.
Was there discussion about doing it or
There was.
making
The
it for
Planning
both
Commission
sides?
looked at a number of different options of how to address the general concern of having design standards, and this is what they have recommended to you.
Mr. Mayor, follow up? So,
Okay.
like aesthetically speaking, do you just have any insight why they decided on one and not the other?
I think when you look at the existing development patterns, on the east side are smaller properties with individual buildings. On the west side, you've got the shopping center with big parking lot. You've got Frere's Building Supply. You've got, going further up the street, you've got the, I guess call it shopping center, where the physical therapy office in Deb's Attic is. It's just...
Mini mall.
Yeah. It's a... These standards would be much more difficult to put into place should those properties have development activity on them, considering their current configuration.
Gotcha.
I think that was the basic reasoning of the Planning Commission in trying to figure out how to frame this.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Mayor.
Questions from the council? Councilor.
Thank you. Dan, I am wondering, can you remind me how many are there any residential homes that are affected by this?
Yes, there are a handful.
And how many?
Maybe 3.
Okay.
I know, there's a single-family dwelling at the corner of Water and First. Then maybe there's 2. There's one at the corner of Burnett and First.
Is there any reason why we couldn't exclude the residential homes from this overlay?
No, there is no reason you couldn't. Again, as drafted, these standards really would only affect them should they choose to repaint their homes or put an addition on. But there is no reason you couldn't exempt them. In the downtown zones, the color standards only apply to mixed use and commercial structures, do not apply to residential structures.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got that?
Thank you for that extra piece of information also. It's very helpful.
I don't know, this is, maybe I should, Bree, I think I'll wait and let you establish your...
Mr. Mayor.
Well,
Point of order.
wait.
Mr. Mayor, please follow the
Yeah,
order in the agenda.
That's what we're going to do. There's a question from the council, but I think I'll just let
No.
her...
Mr.
make
Mayor,
her-
we need to follow, this is a
Yeah.
public
that's what we're
hearing.
doing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Enjoy. Okay. Are there any other questions from the council?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Dan, as far as citizens who have approached you regarding these changes, were there any concerns for future compliance issues by stakeholders? Or did anyone approach you?
I've had, other than Breeze, who came to the Planning Commission's public hearing, I've had contact from 2 of the people who received notice. One was from the owner of the vacant parcel at the southeast corner of Water and First,
Okay.
who had just the month before the notice went out, received Planning Commission approval for the construction of a new building. So he was wondering how these would affect his plans.
Okay. Is that zoned mixed use?
That is zoned, that property is split by a zoning boundary.
Okay.
The portion of the because it used to be 2 different tax parcels that were combined,
Okay.
the portion of it that has frontage on North First Ave is zoned commercial retail.
Okay.
The portion of it that is behind the old DMV building is zoned downtown commercial mixed use.
Okay.
The proposed building that the Planning Commission has approved is located in the commercial retail zone right on the corner.
Okay.
And my response to him was his approval is based on and will continue to be based on the regulations in effect at the time he submitted his application.
Grandfathered, so to speak.
It's grandfathered, so to speak, but should his approval expire
I see.
a year after it was granted, then he would need to follow these standards. I believe, except perhaps for the color palette, that his site design meets these standards.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. That's very helpful.
The second person I heard from was a property owner when the notice went out of this evening's public hearing, who said that even though the notice says copies of the amendments are enclosed, they were not. So I told him how to get a copy.
Okay.
I mean, I forget whether I sent them to the city's website where they're posted or whether I emailed them to him or whatever.
Okay.
But he may be here this evening, I don't know.
All right. Excellent job. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions from the council? If not, then persons in favor of this proposal or ordinance?
Go up to the...
I'm Steve Poison, 1750 East Pine Street. I am president of Revitalize Downtown Stayton, and as Dan has indicated, we were involved in initiating this process. And as I stated at the Planning Commission public hearing, when they considered this issue, RDS is in support of the overlay district being proposed here. We agree with the consultant hired by the city in 2007 that directing people from First Avenue into the shopping area must begin on First Avenue. As Dan alluded to, we believe that the east side of First Avenue buildings that are currently there are in character with the rest of the downtown, much more than the west side is. There are not only some commercial buildings there, but even the residences are such that they could be turned into commercial properties at some point, just as there are other properties in the downtown area. Consistency in appearance on First Avenue will help give us people a sense of place of the historic downtown as a place we're trying to create that sense of this is a place to shop, to revitalize the area. We also agree with the last revitalization consultant you hired last year that the overlay should only include the east side. And actually, the reason we had originally suggested both sides of First Avenue were included in this overlay. And it was your consultant that pointed out that she felt that was a bad idea, because by making it the east side only, we avoid what is a common problem in many downtowns of having a commercial street going through your downtown, which interferes with walkability. So if we keep it on the east side, where our whole area is then walkable, and you don't have to cross First Avenue, in addition to what I said earlier about the difference in character of the buildings. So we took her suggestion that we only do the east side and proposed that to the city. So with that, I will answer any questions you may have, but I would encourage you to adopt Ordinance 1041 as presented.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Steve. Questions? Anything for him? Anyone else? On persons in favor? Okay. Persons opposed? Bree, would you like to get up there and restate your concern, please?
Do I have to say my address and everything again? Yeah. Yes, please. Okay. Breeze Peterson, 712 North First Avenue in Stayton. And I'm opposed to this change in the ordinances. Basically, it would affect me and hardly anyone else. And it doesn't really make any sense to me. I heard what he said, but it still does not seem right or fair or any of the above. So I'm thinking if you're going to make First Avenue look better, it should be all of First Avenue, not just the block I'm sitting in. So, but also, like I said earlier, I've had my business for 20 whatever years, and I was on Second when I first started out for 8 years, and then I moved to First when something opened up so that I could have more exposure. And like I said earlier, I think that the others can do the same if they want more exposure. And I don't think taking away my rights, is right. So anyway, that's how I feel about that. But and it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, even with him explaining it. I understand what he said, but and also the property that my business is at, it's grandfathered in as business and also residential. And so, as Dan said, it does need to be painted pretty soon or yesterday, and so it would affect that and some other things. So if I do change anything, it would make a difference. So it doesn't matter to me. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else opposed? Mr. Cranston?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name is Randy Cranston. I reside at 372 Southeast Church Street in beautiful downtown Sublimity. And I'm here in opposition. First Avenue is a truck route. It's not pedestrian friendly. There's no parking. There's no bicycle path. Large semis go up and down it. It is not part of the downtown area of Stayton. And I guess my argument for that would be if you were to count the numbers of vehicles that go on First Avenue and how many of those turn to go to downtown, a good guess would be 10% or less. So it's not, in theory, a part of the downtown. I always have a problem when somebody without a dog in a fight gives me orders, and I don't think that revitalized downtown Stayton has a dog in the fight. I don't see any property owners of First, Second, or Third Avenue here, nor have I met any. Maybe I'm incorrect here on the revitalized downtown that own property there. So I have a personal issue with that. I don't really think that these will direct people east or west. First Avenue, by its very nature, like I said earlier, is not pedestrian friendly. The street was not built or designed to be pedestrian friendly. Putting up benches and landscaping, changing paint colors is not going to make it pedestrian friendly between log trucks, chip trucks, semis. I mean, there's only one bridge and one road in and out to the south, and that's where they've got to come across. So there is no buffer between those vehicles and the pedestrians. Changing a few things isn't going to create that, and I just think the reach is going too far. It's certainly not part of the historical downtown. I do own the corner of First and Ida. Do I think it'll have an effect on me when we go to paint it? It was just painted a couple of years ago. It'll probably change the color. I did have one question as to, Dan mentioned when changes are implemented, that's when this would be affected. And I'm assuming in my parcel the only change would be if I knocked it down and started over, or if I painted it. But I would like to know if that is, like if a building permit is pulled, is that all of a sudden now these are applied, or what change would make these apply, I guess, aside from the paint color? And that's it, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Any other opposition? Yes, sir. Please.
Bernard Reister, 733 Summerview Drive, Stayton, Oregon. I own a lot on First and Virginia. And it's a triplex with a house next to it. Probably owned it almost 40 years, and I've put, over the years, maybe $100,000 back into that property. I think I know the property pretty well, between me and my management company. I used to have a business there, and I can testify to what Randy says is absolutely true. Those log trucks and cement trucks come by there, and you don't even want to be walking on that street. If there was a bench out there, it'd be dirty in 2 days. You'd have to clean it every day. But I guess what gets me is a part of the thing that Randy says too is people telling me how to run my property. I feel like the city wants to take property rights, the rights to paint the color you want, the rights to plant whatever plants you want, and kind of take them away, and now we're subject to these rules, a paint color. And as far as I know, painting your building, you don't need a building permit. Is that correct? I mean, you can paint it, but now we're going to be subject to this other rule about painting them the right color. I can see problems if somebody had a business and they wanted a wild color, or they wanted to stripe it or do whatever. I mean, they would have to come and get a variance. Is that right? They'd have to ask for a variance from the city? And that means filing an application. What's that cost? $1,500 or whatever? And then we wait to get on the council. I mean, these things bother me. It's this whole business about how far apart your plants have got to be. how are you going to enforce this? If somebody's got plants there, for example, my place wouldn't conform. If you went by it now, you'd say, well, it's pretty plain, there's no trees, I've taken them out, I didn't think there was room for them, and I had a couple nice ones. And my plants are not, they're further than 3 feet apart, and the color's nothing to shout about, and you'd probably say, well, it's okay, but it's not something I would do, and that's perfect. It's not something you would do. It's not something probably anybody would do. And you're taking away all these individualities about their properties, and I think the people that own them, that have got their money in them, know how to manage them. Sure, there's going to be some that are not quite what you would like, but that's the way it is with everybody's property. And I just feel this is an encroachment. I mean, and I'm against this completely. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think in 5 or 10 years you're going to be able to drive down First Street and say, oh, wow, this is so much better. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think there's any way that any of us are going to know the future in 5 or 10 years of what the impact of this will be, other than the fact that you're imposing a burden on your citizen property owners, and with a questionable result. And I don't think that's been manifested what that benefit would be at all. I just don't see it. Anyway, thank you.
All right, thank you, Bernie.
Thank you.
Other persons opposed? Anyone? How about other interested persons? Back to questions from the council.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Go ahead, please.
I have a question for Dan. Dan, is there any reason that we could not exclude all of the grandfathered residential, like that have any tie to residential whatsoever? Like they could flip their business into residential if they wanted to. Can we exclude those?
Yes, you may.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Others? Yeah.
I'd like to make one other comment about the property.
Mr. Mayor, point of order.
We've got all these procedural concerns here, so hang on a second. I don't know.
We're past the public comment part.
Can we?
I'm sorry.
We better wait. Okay. Who was up when that started?
Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Yes.
This question is for Keith. Keith, for these types of hearings, we have to follow procedure because they're quasi-judicial, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so that's why we can't jump around.
This one isn't necessarily quasi-judicial. This is a public hearing. We have the public process that we set based off of.
This is a legislative amendment.
This one's legislative.
Not quasi-judicial.
Yeah.
Okay, even though it's talking about people's land?
It is legislative for 3 reasons. One, it was initiated by the city. It's not an individual coming saying, I want to do something with my property, or I want the rules changed for my property. 2, it affects a, quote, large number of properties, even though it's a relatively small compared to the whole city. It's not being applied to one specific property. Those are really the 2 reasons that make it legislative. You're creating law. You're not applying an existing law to an application. So that's the distinction between legislative activity and quasi-judicial. You're sitting as a legislative body trying to figure out what the law should be, not sitting as judges trying to apply the law to an applicant.
To go back, I think the point also should be made is this is part of the council rules of how we follow these procedures, and this is the criteria that we've set to do that, following the same type thing that we would follow in a quasi-judicial, just to have the hearing be fair and equitable.
Mr. Mayor, follow up.
Go ahead.
Sure. Keith, is there any way that you know of that, like in parliamentary procedure, that we could insert public comment by a motion, or does it? I
mean, without having an attorney here, and I'm gonna tread carefully here. I think if a majority of the council decided to change the procedure that's set out in the council rules, that would be something that could be done. If a majority said that they wanted to reconsider or redo this sort of matter, I think that would be the way to do it. But it would be majority vote of the council to change the rules that have been established and how we do these procedures.
For this hearing?
Correct.
Like basically to reopen public comment?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Can I make a motion right now?
Yeah.
We haven't got to the summary yet. We haven't.
I can.
I think you could do that. I think also at this point you could make a motion to say I would like to have the council reconsider our rules to allow for public comment, additional public comment.
Okay.
Go ahead, as long as no one has a big screaming fit over not following strict procedure, go ahead.
Okay, I guess, can I ask a question then? Mr. Mayor? Yeah, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for the audience. Does anyone have a question for the council or a comment for the council for or opposed to this ordinance?
I'd just like to make one additional comment, if I may. Bernard Reister again. The property I have used to be commercial. I had my business in there probably 15 years, and then I closed it down. I converted it all back to residential. That's what it was. It used to be a residential triplex, and that's what it is now. And anyway, that's when you were making your comments about single-family residence and stuff, and I forgot to say that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. Go ahead, Steve.
I would just like to respond to the gentleman's comment that there's no proof that any of this will make any difference in the downtown revitalization. There is, in fact, proof, according to the Main Street organization, that these are the types of things that do revitalize downtowns by improving their appearance, by improving access, by improving the advertising of the area. They do, in fact, revitalize downtowns. And that's what we're basing this request on. I think you're also faced with, what you're commonly faced with is the good of the entirety versus individual rights. And I understand that's a very tough line for you to draw, but I think that's your job. And we're advocating for what we believe is the good for the entire downtown area as well as the city, rather than trying to put hardships on individuals.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Russ.
Russ Strohmeyer, 325 West Washington Street. I didn't plan on coming up and speaking to this, but and I know we can't ask questions of others, but I don't see how including First Street is going to improve anything in the downtown district if that's what we're trying to do. And I don't see where that's a positive thing. Putting a burden on some people that have properties in that area, what good is that going to do downtown?
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Where are we? Are we
Any more questions?
done with questions and ready for a staff summary? Is there anyone else that's got anything to throw into this? Okay. One quick comment. Does anyone else in here know where a little farm town called Dayton, Washington is?
Yes.
Upstream toward Lewiston from Walla Walla. And if you went through that little town 20 or 30 years ago, it's just another little farm town. It's a county seat, but just a little farm town. And then they redid that main area through there. Mm-hmm. And what a change that made just in driving through it or stopping for a rest stop. But just what a neat little town that became. Somebody had a vision of that strip through there where the main highway goes through, making a difference. And it really did, I think. And it's been a long time since I was up there, but I do remember that. Breeze? Ma'am? Ms. Peterson?
I'll make it really quick. All I want to remind you is it's not for the whole strip of First Avenue. It's for starting at Washington to down to Water Street. So right where I'm sitting, and right where there's just some houses right there, it's not going to do anything to the other side. There's also homes on the other side too. And no one else, it won't change anything else on First. So it's a tiny little strip on the left side. It's not going to help Third. I don't see how.
Okay. All right. Staff summary. Here we go. Thank you.
So ordinance 1041 that you have in front of you would establish, as I said, design overlay district on the east side of First Ave. The standards that are proposed to you by the Planning Commission address really three areas. One, the exterior treatment. They're all about the exterior treatment of the building. One deals with the building placement and the street, and requires that if there was a new building built, that there be either some landscaping foundation landscaping, or a hard surface like pedestrian area between the building and the sidewalk. Two, it requires that if there's an exterior alteration to an existing building, the exterior finished materials must visually match the appearance of those on the existing building. And three, it establishes a palette of acceptable colors for when buildings are repainted. Mr. Reister's building that he referred to, his property, as he said, he came before the city a few years ago and had the zoning changed. It is in the downtown mixed-use zone, so all of the standards of the downtown zone apply to that property today. The only new requirement, because that is a residential property, would be the color palette when it's repainted. With that, the recommendation from the Planning Commission is to adopt the standards, and as is the recommendation from staff.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to go ahead and close the hearing and go to council deliberation at this point. So, who would like to start?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Go ahead, please.
I just have I think I have a problem with changing a residential property owner's stuff for something that's business related. Like we're revitalizing downtown businesses to bring in more business, but if it's homes or duplexes or whatever, just don't know that that should be affected by this change. So for me, I would feel more comfortable if this was changed so that anything that had any residential grandfathering at all, that they should be excluded from this. I think that things can be changed in small steps, and if we can get some people on board, awesome. But if we have people that are opposed to this, I mean, they are property owners living there or having people live there. So I don't think residential should be a part of this. And I agree with the mayor on, I was just driving through Dayton, Washington in August, and it looks great. I mean, I don't know how many of you guys have been to Independence lately, but Independence looks pretty fantastic as well. And they're also on a main street going through there, so trucks go through there all the time. Anyway, that's just my thoughts. I don't think that I don't think that it's legislation that is good enough yet.
Mr. Mayor?
Okay. Yes, go ahead, please.
I don't know how I feel about only a portion of the, I understand the reasoning, But when you're looking at the big picture of First Avenue and you're only putting stipulations on this section on one side of the street to benefit not those businesses, but other businesses, so you're putting restrictions on these businesses who are probably paying more for their property and their leases and whatnot because they have that frontage exposure and because they are on First Avenue, when you're putting extra stipulations on them to not, like I said, not benefit them, but to benefit other people. I would agree on the residential piece as well. But overall, I don't agree with this, to put the stipulation on just this area. If we were looking at it, I understand the role of revitalized downtown Stayton is that core, but if we're looking at it as a broader picture, and if we wanted all of First Ave to look nice, like even the other side of the street should probably be matching colors. If we're putting stipulations on this side to say you can only paint your businesses these colors, and then across the street they can paint their business highlighter yellow, I mean, it kind of defeats the point as well, doesn't it? That's my thought.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other thoughts and comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would love to see this, like, for us to come up with some things that maybe they could do better and send it back to the Planning Commission if that's possible. I don't know if that's even possible, but I would like to see it go back and be improved, because I just don't think that it's there yet, like I said.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Yeah.
I tend to agree with the councilors that spoke already that I think if we've got kind of grand plans for First Ave, that we're going to make it, we're going to make it, put efforts into making it more attractive, more walkable, more whatever you want to say, then I'm a fan of simplicity, and that I think those plans should be fleshed out a little bit more and made more broad, maybe not just First Ave, but maybe also up, East Washington as the entrances to downtown. This kind of very small kind of piecemeal change is not a great way to make those changes happen in the long term, I don't believe. So because of that, I would lean towards not approving this change, and maybe try to come up with a broader vision for what we want that street to look like, and what do we want to change the sidewalk? Do we want to put in benches? Do we want to create a broader standard for that whole area to really make a change, rather than these tiny little changes and making exceptions for residential and all this? It seems just kind of inconsequential to be enacted at this point.
Okay, all right, thank you. Other thoughts and questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I would just say that, living in this town, as long as I have, they're right. It is a truck route, and there are people flying through there. I struggle to see how amending the code is going to do significant change to downtown Stayton and improving it. So I'm kind of struggling with some of this, I'll be honest. And then hearing some of the concerns from the residents as well,
Okay.
That's where I land on this.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I think one of the reasons why, I wanted to be on City Council was about downtown revitalization. Listening to the opposition tonight, I think there are some very good points being made. The traffic on First Avenue can be a nightmare coming out of Safeway, trying to turn left. There's a lot of traffic there. And I'd need to think long and hard about how I'd want to vote on this tonight, but I don't think that the expectations set by this ordinance are insurmountable and couldn't be done. However, I tend to agree with Councilor Ort that we need to look at the other side of First Avenue as well. So I don't think that we're ready for this, in my opinion, and that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
I appreciate everyone's input. I think it has really kind of helped shape where I feel it should go, just hearing each person say what they were thinking, and I am totally agreeing with Councilor Councilor Mullen, because I feel like it should be its own like zone. Like the traffic is completely different there. I mean, everything's so different, but it's one street, so you're just gonna have one street that looks one way, or one side of the street that looks one way, and one side that looks the other way. And why aren't we doing it? Like, it should be a zone all the way down. If we want to make it more beautiful, then it should be made more beautiful in a way that makes sense for that street. And the traffic part, I just think it just really needs to be separate. And if you want to do a revitalized First Street, cool, that's awesome. Let's do a revitalized First Street.
I'd love to see, I mean, I think that would be cool.
But it's its own, like, it has its own character, it has its own thing. And that doesn't mean you can't make it attractive and still get people to, go downtown. But I just think it's going to need its own thing. And we have to think about, people that are living in some of these buildings. I certainly would not want someone to tell me what color I could paint my house. Would I ever pick lime green? No. But when I move into an area, I want to know, what are the regulations here? What's the CCNR? What's the HOA? Like, you make those decisions as a property owner, and if you're living there, it just doesn't seem right to regulate that.
All right, we've heard from everyone tonight. What should we do? We can go to a decision, but the decision may be, what I'm hearing is
Mr. Mayor,
probably no decision.
If I may?
Yes, of
The staff
course.
report provided the council with 3 options. 1, to adopt the ordinance as presented. 2,
Right.
to adopt the ordinance with modifications. And 3, to reject the ordinance and leave the code unchanged. I'd like to suggest a 4th option, which would be to direct staff to modify the ordinance and return to you, and in doing so, provide some direction as to what changes you would like to see.
Okay.
Depending on the nature of the changes, it may be that you want to either continue the hearing or schedule a new hearing and make sure that people provide notice of the revised standards.
All right, thank you, Dan. Mr. Fleischman, what would you folks like to do with that? I was about to suggest those options and motions, but not knowing that 4th or 5th one, I'm glad you stepped in there on that. What do you folks want to do with this?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Dan, are you saying, like, change the ordinance? If we want to make changes to the ordinance, that's what you're saying, that we need to direct you to
That
do?
is the legislative process.
Okay.
You are sitting as policymakers tonight.
Well, what if we don't want to change the ordinance?
That's one of the options.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Leave the code unchanged.
Okay, just a second.
And defeat ordinance 1041 completely.
completely?
That's one of the options.
Okay, hold on.
All right.
The other is to adopt it as modified, or essentially send it back to return to you with what you'd like to see in it or not in it.
Or do nothing. Paige?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion if I could.
Sure.
I'd like to move that we do a new hearing for this and send this back to the city to listen to what we had done, or what we had talked about, what people had kind of like hoped to see in this, and have it come back when it's able to come back and when it's finished.
Okay. All right. In the
Mr.
form
Mayor.
of a motion, then, to essentially send it back to the staff?
Okay.
Okay.
But take into account everything that we've kind of said, so it may have to be completely revamped, is what I'm saying, so.
Does everyone understand the intent of the motion? Going back to the staff for rework, is that close to what you
A
wanted?
pretty big rework.
Okay. Okay. But we need to, again, if we're going to do that, we need to offer the staff some direction, if we can, about where would we like them to go with that? If we can at this point. If not, maybe it's something that needs to be thought about for a while and then come up at the next meeting. Where do you want the staff to go with that ordinance we sent them back? We sent back to them, thank you.
I think, Mr. Mayor,
There's no second,
Is there a second?
There's no second.
I think as a point of order, the question is this a modification of the first option, which is to continue this hearing and just postpone it for a later date, providing clarification from the counselors, getting back, doing another opportunity for public to come to talk in front of the planning commission?
It's not planning, right? It was just you that did this, right? No.
Or is it to close the hearing?
I guess it depends on the nature of the changes the council would like to see. It's whether you continue this hearing or schedule another hearing is kind of, academic. You could close tonight's hearing if you...
Which we did.
And then we hold a new hearing depending, and if you want to exempt residential properties, then that's one thing. If you want to have standards that apply on both sides of the street, then my concern is that the property owners and businesses on the west side of the street receive notice, which they did not, other than what the published notice in the newspaper and what's on the web. But I've heard a counselor say this is what she would like to see. I've heard another counselor say this is what she would like to see. I haven't heard the council say, yeah, let's move in this direction.
Well, that's what yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
That was my comment. We need to offer some of that. Please, go ahead.
Dan, so the fourth option, I guess it says close the hearing and retain the code unchanged. So you're saying that this doesn't get adopted? The entire code remains unchanged?
If you don't want to make any change in the code, then either there's no motion or there's a motion to not adopt or defeat Ordinance 1041. If you want to do something, but this isn't it, then I need to know what something is so I can bring it back to you in the future.
Gotcha.
Okay. So we've got a motion on the floor. Was there ever a second?
No, it died.
I didn't think so. Okay, so the motion dies for lack of a second. Where would you folks like to be now?
I just don't want this to go away. Like
Mr. Mayor, I move that we close the hearing and retain the code unchanged.
I would second.
I've got a motion and a second to close the hearing and retain the motion, the code unchanged. Says no motion is necessary. Because my cheat sheet said in there that at some point to close the hearing, which I did, so that's kind of a moot point. Any discussion on that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
So my worry with closing the hearing and retain it unchanged would be that, like, this would completely die. The entire conversation of First Street is just, it's dead.
I don't think so. Sorry.
No.
Because, I mean,
Mr. Mayor.
couldn't we?
Mr. Mayor.
Couldn't we, like, completely, like, basically gut it and go, okay, instead of just this one little piece of First, we're gonna just do an overlay of First still. It can still be an overlay, but change it so that, so the residences aren't affected by it unless they flip to be a business later. And I don't know, I don't think that we should, like, let it just completely die. It's a good concept to want to make a main street, more beautiful and more walkable. It's a good concept. I don't think that it should just go away, but I just don't think that I think we need to be careful how we do something like that.
That's been the mood of the council on this.
I know, but I'm
on
just
this
afraid that
question.
if we
Yeah.
do that, it's gonna just go away completely, and I don't think it needs to.
I've seen several businesses recently have done some painting and some updating, even on First Ave. And it is certainly a challenge because you want to beautify the city, but then also you go back to like the property owners' rights and what they want to be done with their property. And so it's kind of a balance in that way. I don't know if I'm, I like a vision of like seeing all of First Ave look really nice is certainly appealing, but I don't know that I'm ready to impose upon all the businesses of First Ave. And then if you go and you only make the businesses do it, but then the homeowners don't participate at all, how does that affect it? That's just something that came to my mind, but I don't know that I'm necessarily ready to impose that's kind of a big project to tackle to make
Mr. Mayor.
the
Folks
entire
ready to
street do it.
Go to a vote on this?
No, Mr. Mayor.
No, we're still discussing it.
We can still yak some more.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Someone,
I don't think that we need to end a conversation, which that's what closing it and retaining it unchanged does, is it just ends the conversation. Like, the conversation can still stay open so that we can let city staff do what their job is and to try to improve legislation and then bring it before the governing body.
okay.
Just because we don't like what's in here right now doesn't mean that Dan hasn't listened to everything that we've said, and yeah, he may need more guidance, but I don't think that we need to just be like, nope, we're just not gonna make any part of First Street look good. I think that we can still talk about it. We can still have this open, have him work on it, and then have him bring it back, and it could be brought back to the Planning Commission or to us or whatever. Like, it doesn't really matter who it comes before next, just as long as we continue the conversation, because there are some people in the town that do want the city to look nicer. But that is a balance. You have to balance out with property owners' rights. And so I think that there is somewhere in here something that everyone could be comfortable with if we just kept talking about it. So, and maybe not tonight, because Dan would have to go back and do his magic that he does, but I think that it's not a good idea to close it and then just end the discussion. Point of order, please.
Although that's what we've got is a, thank you. That's what we've got is a motion to just shut the book for a while, at least.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like
Yes.
to call for a vote.
Okay. Call for the question. Would you poll the council, please, Alyssa?
Sure.
Thank you.
Councilor Mullen?
Yes.
Councilor Ort?
Yes.
Councilor Patty?
Yes.
Councilor Hook?
No.
Councilor McDonald?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1.
Okay. All right. Since there is no action, do I need to read this thing? Want to make sure we do all these things.
So
Okay.
I would not read the closing statement because there is no action to appeal.
Well, I thought so too. Okay. Good. Good. All right. We have a couple of more things to do this evening. Susanna, General Business Audit 2018-19. Staff report. You have the floor, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight I'm going to present the information on the city's audit that was conducted for the 18-19 fiscal year. This is an information-only agenda item. In your board package, you have the completed audit from the auditors, along with letters from the auditors explaining their responsibilities, their opinion on the financial statement, and their findings. In addition, you have letters from the city's MD&A, which is our management discussion and analysis letter that gives you an overview of the audit, highlights and some changes that took place during that fiscal year. And also a letter from the city that addresses the findings and the plans for correction, the findings. This letter went to the auditors already and will also be going to the state of Oregon with a copy of the audit. Audits are conducted by an outside independent CPAs. The auditors conduct a review of the city's financials according to government auditing standards. And as the requirements, they need to state their opinion on the city's financials. In this, their opinion determines if the financial statements are free of material misstatement. Basically, what that means is that the financial statements are presented fair and reasonably stated. That means that the city can trust the financial statements. The auditor letter that you have within your, one of the auditor's letters that's dated for December 11th is their opinion. And the auditor's opinion has stated that our financials are fairly stated. What that means, that's really good news. That means the council can trust the city's financial statements. In addition to the auditors doing their review of our financials to determine their opinion, they also review for compliance, and they have and for internal controls. So they have listed 2 areas of concern to be addressed. The first one was in compliance with budget legal requirements. That is according to Oregon budget law. There are many areas that the auditors review, like our GASB rules and auditing standards and things like that. The only areas of concern they found was in the budget area, and there was 3 areas that they brought to our attention. The first one was our expenditures were in excess of our apportionments. That was in 2 funds. In our water fund, and the personnel was a little over $7,000 over budget in our expenditures, and in public works for the materials and service was a little over, just under $1,000. The second area they brought to our concern was that the operating contingencies were approved in a non-operating fund for not only in the 18-19 budget, but also in the 19-20 budget. The third area and budget area that where they brought to our concern was that the budget committee meeting notification. Basically, that was the timing of the notification of when it was loaded onto the city's website. So the plan for the city to go forward to address these issues, when it comes to the expenditures over apportionment, part of having hired me and that I am here on a regular basis will give me the opportunity to ensure that the department heads receive monthly reports for budget to actuals. And also I will be meeting with the departments on a regular basis to review their budgets to see where they're at and project them out, so that we can look for any possible issues before they happen, so we can be proactive instead of reactive to budget situations. And along with this will be the regular can't speak today. Along with that, I also will be presenting on a regular basis the financials to budget to actuals to the council as well, to keep this information going. There is no guarantee that an issue could not come up at the last minute that result in expenditure being over apportionment, but at least we would know ahead of time and be prepared for those things if they come. When looking at the operating contingency and the non-operating funds, just met with the department heads explaining this issue so they understand going forward for approving the next budgets. I also will have to bring the budget committee back to meet to review in detail these issues from the 18-19, and we also have to reapprove the 19-20 budget. And in that I will be reviewing with the department heads any other areas that we may want to make adjustments to that budget to ensure that we end our expenditures at the end of the year under the apportionments. So we will be doing that going forward. And then they will reapprove the budget. And then for the budget committee notification, basically the city did not have documentation that the auditors wanted to show what date we actually uploaded the notification to the website. So now that the staff is aware of that change, and we'll ensure that we have the notification that the auditors want to see. And then we've also will be adding in that to the budget calendar, just so everyone's aware, and then we all support each other to ensure that notifications go out to the community as stated by Oregon budget law. The second area of concern were internal controls over financial reporting. When you're looking at internal controls over financial reporting, there's two different types of findings that the auditors could present to us. The first one is material weakness. What material weakness means that the states that it is reasonably possible that errors will not be prevented or corrected. And the second type of internal control over financial reporting findings is called a significant deficiency. This is less severe than a material weakness, but it's important and merits its attention. Typically in our minds we would think that a material weakness would not be as severe as a significant deficiency, but in accounting auditors terminology it's actually the opposite. So a material weakness is a red flag. It is a huge issue to address quickly and make changes. Where a significant deficiency is more like a yellow flag. It's something that you need to pay attention to. You need to look at making these adjustments. You should move forward in a positive direction and prevent it from ever becoming a material weakness. Okay, so that's important to understand as we look at that. A second thing is that internal controls are way more than just preventing fraud. Internal controls are also timely and accurately reporting. It's reviewing, it's protecting and mitigating risk, and those type of things. So there's many areas that we look at internal controls. So in your letters from the auditors, they state that they gave us a significant deficiency in the area of day-to-day accounting and year-end closing. So the city is very committed to having a city that is a model to other cities of our size, understanding that our finance department is small in nature, brings special challenges in order to can stay on top of internal controls. But we were already proactive in making these changes even before the auditors brought us these findings. When I took the position and came in, I began to analyze the finance department, and these list of changes that I'm recommending, that I'm sending to state, we already actually had started doing them. As part of why in your letter, the auditor stated in the back of the audit that we are in agreement and we already started making some of these changes going forward. When I took over the position, our finance team was kind of working in silos. For example, AR was kind of doing its thing and AP was kind of doing its thing, and they really weren't cross-training over with helping each other, and they weren't looking at all aspects of their part of the finances. So by restructuring their job duties and their assignments allowed them to be actively participating in all aspects of what they did, right down to balancing the general ledger on the balance sheets for their parts of their accounting that they do. And this also allowed us to segregate duties and be able to cross-train what each other's doing and allow for stability for the finance department. If one person is out, we have someone else that can do that. And then we can separate duties. For example, the person that inputs the invoices to be paid cannot set up a new vendor. That's a separation of duties, so they stay separated. So restructuring that started that process. And in doing that, we also increased training to the staff on how to utilize the accounting software in new and efficient ways, because software can be a part of tracking for internal control purposes, as well as training them on all aspects of internal controls. So they're an active team participating in ensuring the financials are guarded. We've also looked at the city, so the finance department not only is responsible for all of the financial needs of every department in the entire city, but they also are responsible for handle all of the traffic and people that come into City Hall. City Hall is a very busy office, and it gets, lots of the community does come into the city. And evaluating that traffic flow and the duties and expanding the job duties was why we're adding an additional part-time person to help work in the front desk. It will help alleviate some of that front desk help to allow the new changes in their job duties for them to be able to do that, but it will also add an increased separation of duties. Since this person's main focus will be dealing with the customers and those kind of things, they will be doing like the bank reconciliation, for example, because they don't input into the GL at all, but bank rec is a great way to ensure internal controls over our cash for matching the bank. So there'll be duties, and they'll be doing like that to assist in ensuring the supporting roles of internal controls. And the last piece that we'll be creating and adding will be monthly reviews and reconciliation. We'll be adding a soft closing process that will have checklists so that we're reviewing and reconciling on a regular basis before year end, and that we are assuring that the financials are reviewed. And internal controls are an ongoing process, and in the letter sent to the state, there's no end date on when these things will be done, because one, timing of training and staff and hiring a new position, and as well as this is one area that the auditors gave us as a concern, which was daily operations and close, but next year they may have a different area of internal controls that they want us to focus on more. So internal controls is an ever-growing and ever-changing, but the city is committed, and I am committed to ensure that we're always reviewing and keeping that going forward, so that we can protect the financials. That does, again, it does not guarantee that we won't get them. We look at findings from the auditors as an opportunity, not always as this is terrible. So, and so that's the information on the audit. And again, we'll be going through more detail on some of this when the budget committee meets. But does anyone have any questions on all of that wonderful stuff in your packet?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I have three real quick ones.
Okay.
How was the auditor selected? Was it via RFP, RFQ? And then how was the statement of work established? In other words, the scope. And then even though you said that there's really no timing on when things are supposed to be closed out, what's the process for managing as there's a finding, when it's closed out, and when is it? Are these auditors on the hook to come back 6 months later?
So you can answer the first one because I wasn't here to choose these auditors.
Yeah, so the audit came about due to an internal investigation. A forensic auditor was hired out of Eugene, and through that, the council at the time was active in selecting a new auditor based off of concerns we had on a prior auditor, and that was 2016 and 17. And so an RFP went out, and Bolt Carlisle Smith was the person that selected that. So that's the first question. The second question is the scope of work is delineated at the start of the process, where the auditors lay out. They sent a letter, I think, to all of you. That's kind of that. Some of you had concerns like, what is this? But that was the auditor sort of laying out, here's what we're looking at and what we're trying to do. The third component is something that's been ongoing since that forensic audit that was done in 16-17, which is internal controls. And this was highlighted because we had someone leave their position and go to a new position, which caused us to be down individual. And so, you know, we've been recognizing from that. Susanna's had a lot of conversations. We've had conversations. She's hinted at one of the things, which is to look at using computers as another, you know, software and packages and all that to do that. But We're talking about this because I think this is one of the ongoing things we're going to need to look at and try to be aware of, and I'll let her speak to this as well, but we've had a lot of conversations on what we can do as much as possible to show a solid and consistent plan, and maybe what, to your point, it's having someone come in and review at 6 months or a year to then make additional recommendations. I know you've had conversations with mentors of yours. I've had conversations with mentors of mine. With an organization our size, how do we try the best we can to show that we're doing a separation of duties and preventing as much as we can potential for fraud, or even trying to make it so it's not enticing where someone thinks they can commit fraud. And I'll let you, if you want to.
So my goal going forward is I will be meeting with the auditors here shortly to review in detail the audit. I was not here during this fiscal year, so I want to go through the things that they're looking at. I have met with them a couple times and talked about some of the change I've already putting in place, what I'm doing going forward. So to pay them to come out to do an additional audit would probably not be the wisest, because I'll just be in good communication with them. But when they do come out next year and do their audit again, then they will be, of course, that'll be the first thing on their list, is looking to see that those areas were addressed. And I also plan on future years having the auditors come out and speak directly to you. We felt this year that it'd be wisest if I was the first one to present, to kind of go through all the different aspects of what the auditors are doing, to kind of help give you a feel of what the details this are, because this is the first time this has been in a public meeting. And then second, by the time we go through and look at 18-19's budget and correct 19-20's, and then we approve 20-21's, then you'll have a good feel. And then I've had a chance to present on the financials a few different times, like next council I'm presenting on a half-year update. Then that'll give you more to be able to know, and different things to ask the auditors directly. So going forward, if that answers that question. Does that answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of what we're trying to do is set a culture with the updates, the half-year updates, the previous update that's being done, and doing this is we're trying to more and more be transparent and open about what's happening with our budget, with our audits, and to empower you as the policymakers. Ultimately, the power of the purse is probably your greatest obligation, to get you more and more comfortable and to have conversations so that you can be well informed and to know what's going on. And so when we have conversations about budget needs or software needs, you're aware of why we're doing this and what the intent is.
Okay. Questions?
Mr. Mayor?
Public comments and discussion. Yes,
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Susanna, do you know how happy I am that you're here?
Oh, thank you.
That's my question.
I guess not, but now I do.
No, I think we all are, certainly.
Yeah.
It's something I take very seriously, and it's very important to me that financials are something that we don't learn how to read and interpret, and I enjoy being able to translate it so you guys can understand it. And even reading the auditor's language and understanding the differences, and even myself, you'll see all my little notes and looking it up and trying to confirm. So, but the more transparent it can be and the easier for you to understand will support you in your oversight of our financials. So thank you.
Another pleasant face at City Hall, too.
Thank you.
Other questions, thoughts, discussion on that? Nothing else. Thank you for bringing that to us this evening, and
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Sharing this.
You're welcome.
Strange language.
It is.
Last business thing tonight, award of contract for television inspection, cleaning and repair of the sanitary sewer and stormwater systems. Mr. Ludwig.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This evening before you is an issue that the City Council must determine whether or not they will accept a bid and award a contract to Spartan Environmental Services in the amount of $404,900 for all the work related to a television inspection, cleaning, repair of sanitary sewer and stormwater systems. If you remember, back in November, I brought before the council our 2018-2019 TMDL report. These are requirements that the department environmental quality place on our city to meet goals within the Willamette watershed. Mercury, temperature, and sediment, if you will. And we have these requirements in that TMDL. This contract specifically aligns with those requirements. In the contract, this contractor will be performing all the sanitary sewer inspection, including labor, materials necessary to perform the annual cleaning of the CCT up to 7.5 miles of sanitary sewer, 2 miles of stormwater sewer. They'll be cleaning in, all our catch basins, our manholes, things that are called out in that TMDL. This is a requirement, again, by the Department of Environmental Quality. The contract is up for a 3-year period, 2020 to 2022. We have the ability to cancel this contract at any time. The project was advertised December 12th. I'm sorry. It was advertised in late November. It was opened on December 12th. We had 2 bids. Michaels Corporation, who was our previous contractor for this work, came in at $604,000. Spartan Environmental Services came in at $404,000. That's a 1-year cost. That's not a 3-year cost. That's a 1-year cost to perform this work. That's 43% more than that contract was in 2016 through 2019. Costs are skyrocketing, I realize that. So staff's going to be looking for ways to where we can reduce those costs in the next year, and we'll move forward from there. I have some ideas. I think I brought some up to the Budget Committee last year, and I'll be sharing more with those after I do some analyses later on this year. But as we sit here today, we need to get this work done. Most of this work is done in the wintertime when the rains are moving through our sewer lines and we can find inflow and infiltration. So now's the time to get moving on that. So the city staff reviewed the low bid, and we recommend the award the contract to Spartan Environmental Services in the full amount of $404,900. And with that, I will take any questions that you have for me.
Is the presence of mercury a common thing in Willamette Valley streams?
Mm-hmm.
Really?
And the reason we're cleaning our manholes, and we're required to put in these pollution control manholes, it's the Clean Water Act, first of all. It's a federal law. It's not just DEQ, it's federal. Any kind of hard metal attaches itself to sediment, which goes into our catch basins, goes into our pollution control manholes, and if we don't clean those, they'll go right to our stream, and our stream is the Salem Ditch, goes out to Milk Creek, Willamette River. Well, Willamette River has all the pollutants in it, and that's what they're trying to do, is eliminate those, or at least reduce them. This is our small way of trying to help out. I hope that answers your question.
Well, part of it.
What was the other question?
What other metallic substance? Do we have arsenic?
We got copper. We probably have fractions amounts of arsenic. We don't test for arsenic.
Okay.
But any city in the Willamette Valley, you have radon. There's all sorts of different things that we have in our soils here.
Yeah. One of the neat things about looking at the clear pools on the North Fork are they sometimes are kind of green from copper. Yeah, that's common up there, I think. Anyway, that's all for me.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Lance, so this 404, can you remind me, was this obviously wasn't budgeted for because we just got this bid. So where does the extra money come from?
Well, we won't be spending any extra money this year. We had budgeted $283,000, which was our previous contract. We won't be spending any more than that. I'll just control the contract amount. But next year, we'll be paying for that. It's going to be in our new budget. It's going to have to be.
I gotcha.
This isn't something that I have a say in. Yes, we can do it, or no, we have to do it. It's federal law, and DEQ kind of regulates that. And I annually have to submit a report to DEQ stating if we've met these milestones or not. And if we haven't, Well, fortunately, we haven't had to tell them that we haven't too often, but they can come back and, you know, they have the ability to fine us or whatever else. I am looking into that, though, and that'll be one of the things that I report on in the future. What is the, what are the ramifications if we don't meet it? We're a small town. We don't have the money to be $400,000 a yearly. You know, it's great, but, you know, I'd kind of like to know what those ramifications are, so we'll probably be reaching out to our city attorney to inform me of that, and maybe they'll reach out to DEQ and he can get an answer from them.
Okay, good.
Mr. Mayor.
Other questions or thoughts? Paige?
My blood pressure is like skyrocketing as I'm looking at how much this is going to cost. I'd love to know what Susanna has to say about, like, is this even possible? Like, this is a lot of money. It's a lot of money. I mean, when we're looking at budget committee, it sounds like we're floating something to the next year, and it seems like a lot of money.
Fortunately, our sewer fund is probably the healthiest fund we have in the city, that and the street fund.
That's good.
Yeah, so, I mean, Susanna can talk about it, but I can tell you that's the healthiest fund we have. And again, we won't be spending more than we already have budgeted in this fiscal year. Next fiscal year, we'll be talking about it in April and May when we talk about the budget. There are some alternatives that we can look at, like doing a lot of this work ourselves, but there's going to be an initial investment to do that. I talked about it a little bit last budget cycle, our last budget meeting, and I'll be bringing it up again.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on the budget committee, so it's like we all are on the budget committee, so, and I know how those committees go, so it's like, usually it's kind of put in there and then it gets approved, and I just want to know, like, how is this gonna even work? Like, where do we get all this money from? In the next budget, like, where does it even come from? Like, this just seems like a lot. 43% over what we paid the last time.
The last maintenance contract, yeah.
Is insane.
Luckily, you're.
And I know you guys know that, but I'm like, that's why, I mean, we have to approve this stuff, but I'm just wanting to know, like, how are we gonna do this? That's so much money.
Well, we'll be doing, I mean, Lance is the expert of his department, and I'm still getting my bearings right, but we would be looking at the fee for services and what we're collecting, as well as what we had planned that we could shift and maintenance things, right?
Yeah,
Looking
again,
at things like that as we
I
prepare.
really don't want to get into it tonight, but there are some alternatives that I can look at, but I've got to do some analysis before I present anything to you.
Okay.
There may be some investments that we make in the short term that benefit us in the long term that reduces this cost, but I'm not willing to speak to them until I do an analysis with it.
I'm just concerned about, like, rates going up and things like that for.
None of us want to see rates go up.
Right. So it's just where my mind goes, is like, where you get the money from, so.
Yeah, that's a good question. Susanna?
Yeah, I don't know yet. I don't know yet. How about that?
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Lance, just out of curiosity,
We'll work together on it.
who held the 16-19 bid, the maintenance contract for 16 to 19?
Maybe Michael's Corporation.
Okay, and they came in, they bid,
$200,000 more.
so their bid from 2016 to 2019,
Double.
and was it just the cost of doing business, or technologies increased,
Well,
or?
I had an issue with them last year. They were trying to get out of the contract before 3 years was up, and I held their feet to the fire and said, "Can't do it." And they told me at that time, well, it's going to probably be a 10 to 15% increase next year. That's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting, 55, 60% more. Wow. So they didn't really reach out and ask why, which I think personally, I was going down the lines of looking at alternatives anyway. This just puts it more in the forefront. And we'll be talking about that in the future. But as of now, I need to get some TV work going. I don't have anybody to do it right now, even with the $284,000 we have budgeted, which we haven't spent. We've spent very little of. But I need to get going now that it's raining. Now's the time to be out there TV.
Bake sale? Thank you.
You'd like to award that contract tonight, though.
Tomorrow, yeah.
Well, okay,
I'd like you
tomorrow.
guys to approve it tonight, yeah.
Okay, there we go. Back to business. Could we get some action on that request, folks?
Yeah, I like the one Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we award the contract to lowest responsible bidder in the full contract amount.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second to award a contract for television inspection, cleaning and repair of the sanitary sewer and stormwater systems to Spartan Environmental Services, LLC.
Yeah.
In the amount of $404,900. And there was a second?
Yes.
There was a second. Any discussion, please? Alyssa, would you poll the council, please?
Sure. Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Counselor McDonald?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Motion passed 5-0.
Okay, good, thank you. Communication from mayor and councilors. I don't have anything else this evening. Any of you folks have something you need to share?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I just wanted to circle back to our chat with the counselor on December 7th at Snow Peak Brewery and thank everyone who came. Russ, appreciate your input there, and it was a great time getting to know those in the community, so thank you.
Okay. You got another one of those scheduled for this month?
Maybe not for this month.
No, not for the, okay. All right.
December came up fast, and
Yeah.
so
Okay.
we'll talk about possibly doing another one.
Anything else from any of you folks? Staff?
I would like to turn some time over to Jana.
Okay.
So Mayor and Council, this month on the 25th at the Stayton Public Library is the Stayton Library Foundation's Brews, Bites, and Books event. And I'd like to invite you guys to come to that and let you know the tickets are on sale, so please also tell your friends. It's a fun event and it supports the Library Foundation, which in turn supports the library. So it's from 7 to 9 on the 25th. Three Creeks Brewing is going to present all of the beer for the event, and they are fantastic partners for us in this event. And then all of the bites are provided by local restaurants. So,
Thank you.
Awesome.
I'll just say I went last year, and it was a great time. So the library after hours was pretty fun.
Is there anything else from staff? Future agenda items are fiscal half-year update, public hearing on alley vacation, emergency management equipment update, and a Marion County intergovernmental agreement for paving. If there's nothing else this evening, let's go home. And thank you all.